Europe is waking up to a reality it never expected. Its roads are being taken over. In just 1 month, China's BYD tripled its sales across the EU, while Tesla, once the face of the electric revolution, saw registrations collapse by more than a third.
China's BYD saw a 225% surge in new European registrations.
This is not just about sales. It's about power, influence, and the unraveling of an industry that has defined Europe for over a century. Germany, Italy, and France, the engines of Europe's car-making tradition, are under pressure. Volkswagen's market share is slipping, Italian icons are losing their luxury edge, and Renault and Peugeot can't compete with China's prices. Europe, once the home of world-class cars, is sliding into decline. Brussels is caught in a trap. Tariffs on Chinese EVs would protect Europe's industry but raise costs for consumers and slow the green transition. Keep markets open, and Chinese imports will overwhelm domestic players. Either way, Beijing gains ground, and the contradiction is glaring. While warning about unfair competition, Europe's own automakers are lobbying for more access to China, even as Chinese brands flood their home markets. That's not resilience, it's dependence. This is the story of how Europe's most important industry may already have been handed to Beijing without a fight. Today, we'll uncover the cracks, the politics, and the numbers behind this takeover. If you're new here, subscribe and join us, because what's happening is bigger than cars. It's about Europe's future, its survival, and whether it can withstand an industrial war. Now let's begin. In August, a sales report that could have easily been overlooked sent shockwaves through Europe's automotive industry. What seemed like a routine update concealed a much larger story. China is no longer just knocking on Europe's door, it's already moving in. BYD, China's flagship electric car maker, didn't post modest gains. It surged. Within the European Union, 9,100 BYD vehicles were registered in a single month. Extend that count to the UK, Norway, Switzerland, and other European markets, and the total rises to 11,455. That's not a handful of test sales, it's a fleet arriving almost overnight. To put it in perspective, just a year ago, BYD's presence was barely noticeable. Today, it has multiplied to a scale that can no longer be ignored. Europe's automotive leaders are watching events unfold with disbelief. Volkswagen, Renault, BMW, and Mercedes built their reputations on shaping global car culture. For decades, their vehicles stood as markers of quality, engineering excellence, and national pride. Now, on their own turf, they see competitors from Shenzhen and Shanghai taking the wheel. And the trend isn't slowing down. It's accelerating with each passing month. The shift is more than commercial, it is cultural. German precision on the Autobahn, French practicality in the suburbs, Italian flair in the city center. These cars once defined Europe's identity on the road, but the landscape is changing. Chinese EVs are appearing in more cities, in more neighborhoods, on more motorways. Each new registration tilts the balance further, turning Europe's streets into a display of Beijing's industrial power. As Europe struggles with the flood of Chinese cars, another shock is unfolding. Tesla's decline. Once celebrated as the face of the electric revolution, the company is now slipping fast. In August alone, Tesla sales in EU collapsed by 37%. That's more than a slowdown. It's a free fall. For years, Elon Musk's company symbolized the promise of Western leadership in clean mobility. Tesla was marketed as bold, innovative, and disruptive. The company that would outpace traditional automakers and prove the West could lead in the technologies of the future. But now, the flaws critics long warned about are catching up all at once. Prices too high for most buyers, rollouts too slow, and supply chains too fragile to deliver on time. While Tesla stumbles, BYD is racing ahead. Its cars undercut Tesla by thousands of euros, offer competitive or even longer ranges, and, thanks to full control of its supply chain, from lithium mining to its own shipping fleet, arrive faster and more reliably. Tesla cannot match that pace. The contrast is striking. Tesla, once seen as the champion of the West, is shrinking in Europe. BYD, meanwhile, is scaling rapidly, capturing market share month after month. Every Tesla lost is another step toward Chinese dominance in an industry the West believed it led. And the symbolism runs deep. Tesla was never just another car company. It was proof that America and Europe still had the ingenuity to shape the future of mobility. If Tesla falters, that image collapses. And Beijing seizes influence not with sanctions or military power, but with the steady flow of electric cars rolling off its production lines. BYD's rise is no accident. It is the result of years of planning in Beijing, a strategy designed to give China something Western carmakers could never achieve: full command of the supply chain. While American and European rivals were busy competing with each other, China was quietly building the infrastructure to dominate. Most traditional automakers still operate in a fragmented system. They design vehicles, outsource batteries, depend on third-party suppliers for materials, and hire shipping firms to move their cars. Every step adds cost, delay, and vulnerability. BYD chose a different path. It built an ecosystem that keeps everything under its own control. The company mines the lithium, refines it into batteries, installs those batteries in its vehicles, and now even ships cars on its own massive roll-on, roll-off vessels. From the mine to the motorway, BYD manages the entire journey. The payoff is clear. In the first half of 2025, BYD's overseas sales doubled to 472,000 units, nearly a quarter of its global output. The company is already aiming for 1 million. More importantly, foreign sales now generate 36% of its revenue, since outside China it can charge higher prices while still undercutting rivals. In markets from Europe to Asia, BYD is taking on Tesla, Volkswagen, and Toyota, and winning. For Western automakers, the contrast is brutal. Volkswagen struggles to secure raw materials. Renault waits on battery suppliers. BMW is being forced to slash profits just to stay competitive, and the pressure is mounting as it expects another 1 billion euros loss from tariffs. Mercedes, once untouchable in the luxury sector, is watching Chinese EV makers enter its territory. The humiliation is most visible in Germany, the heart of Europe's car industry. Cars once viewed as national pride are being displaced on home roads by Chinese imports that are cheaper, longer ranged, and delivered without delay. This is more than competition. It is industrial decline unfolding in real time. And just as Europe once built its dependence on Russian gas, it is now walking into a new form of dependency, one built on Chinese cars. After Germany, the pressure moves south, where France and Italy are facing the same struggle. Here, the issue goes beyond economics. In both countries, cars are deeply tied to national culture and identity, and that identity is under threat. In France, Renault and Peugeot once defined everyday mobility. Their cars were affordable, practical, and proudly French. For decades, they were the natural choice for most drivers. That tradition is fading fast. Chinese automakers now offer vehicles with lower prices, longer ranges, and more built-in technology. The French consumer who once walked into a Renault showroom is increasingly looking at BYD instead. The sales figures tell the story. In the first quarter of 2025, BYD sold 659 cars in France, compared to 1,597 in all of 2024. The volumes remain smaller than local brands, but the momentum is unmistakable. With more models arriving, BYD is securing a stronger foothold by year's end. Italy's challenge cuts even deeper. Ferrari, Maserati, Alfa Romeo, these names are more than brands. They are cultural treasures, admired worldwide as symbols of design and engineering brilliance. Yet Chinese companies are now pushing into this space too. Their premium EVs combine futuristic styling with strong performance, offered at a fraction of the cost. Slowly, the edge that made Italian cars unique is eroding. Meanwhile, Stellantis, the group behind Fiat, Peugeot, and several others, has already paused production lines because of weak demand. That is more than a temporary setback. It shows just how fragile Europe's position has become. In both France and Italy, cars are part of national pride. When that slips away, the loss extends far beyond factories and balance sheets. It reshapes how nations see themselves. Now picture Paris, Rome, and Milan in a decade. Streets filled not with Renaults, Peugeots, Ferraris, or Maseratis, but with fleets of Chinese EVs. The question is larger than market share. What happens to a nation's pride and to a continent's identity when its icons are replaced? For France and Italy, this is more than market competition. It is the slow replacement of culture itself. The spotlight now shifts to Brussels, where Europe's leaders face a decision that feels like a trap with no way out. The first option is tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. On paper, that looks like a way to protect Europe's carmakers. But tariffs would quickly raise prices for ordinary Europeans already struggling with inflation, and they would slow the green transition, undermining climate goals Brussels has built its reputation on. The second option is to leave markets open. That keeps prices low, gives consumers more choice, and speeds up electrification. But the cost is brutal. European automakers would be overwhelmed, jobs would vanish, and dependence on Chinese technology would deepen. Whichever path is taken, Beijing comes out stronger. Tariffs stall the green shift. No tariffs accelerate China's dominance. Either way, the balance of power tilts eastward. It's the same vulnerability Europe once faced with Russian gas, a dependence that seemed manageable until it turned into a geopolitical weapon. This time, the pressure point isn't energy, it's transportation. The irony is striking. Even as Europe worries about Chinese cars flooding its streets, its own automakers are pleading for more access to China. Volkswagen still relies on China for nearly 40% of its global sales. Stellantis is chasing joint ventures to stay afloat. Renault is expanding partnerships in Beijing. These aren't signs of negotiation. They are signs of survival. Beijing understands this perfectly. Europe is dependent, divided, and desperate. And in that position, Brussels has little leverage left to shape its own future. What happened in August was not a temporary spike. It was the opening shot of a new industrial war, and Europe is already on the losing side. BYD and other Chinese automakers aren't simply entering the market. They are dismantling it piece by piece. Every Tesla registration lost, every Volkswagen delay, every hesitation in Brussels moves China another step closer to dominance. If this trend continues, and all signs say it will, the decline of made-in-Europe cars is no longer a question of if, but when. Within a decade, a continent once proud of its automotive leadership could find itself reliant on imports from abroad. Factories that symbolize national pride may fall silent, while Beijing secures control over the very industry that defined modern Europe. The cruelest irony is that Europe is financing its own decline. By buying cheaper imports, keeping markets open, and leaning on Chinese supply chains, it is underwriting the rise of its competitor. The savings for consumers today, just a few thousand euros, come at the cost of millions of jobs tomorrow, entire sectors of innovation, and the independence of an industry central to Europe's economy. The question is no longer whether Europe is at risk, but how history will remember the moment when the fall became irreversible. Imagine the future. Factories in Germany, France, and Italy standing empty, while the streets are filled with Chinese EVs. When Brussels has no leverage left, historians will ask, when did it begin? The answer will point back to August 2025. The month Europe surrendered its automotive future, not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of Chinese electric cars rolling onto its roads. For more analysis on these global shifts, subscribe and turn on the notification bell.